Gentlemen, Justus, Eric, welcome to Kicking Tables. It's so good to have you here finally. We've been talking to you about Doomlings for, I don't know, Eric, was it been like a month, 2 months now that we've been working on this, getting you guys on
It's
the
funny.
show?
Yeah, a month in Kickstarter time is like a year. If there's like dog years and different planets. Yeah, when you're putting together a Kickstarter campaign,
Yeah.
every day feels like a week.
Oh, I'm
There's so
sure.
much to do,
I'm
so little
sure.
time.
Is this your first Kickstarter, you guys?
It is.
Absolutely.
So, how overwhelmed are you feeling right now?
Do you want to answer that, Justice?
You know, we're filmmakers, so there are very few things in this world that are as big of a mountain to climb as film is. Now, I'm not saying Kickstarter isn't its own hurdle that we are, completely new to, but we've learned over the past 9 years of making commercials and movies how to kind of manage the overwhelming feeling, I suppose, at least hide it, push it away.
Okay.
Here's what happens. So like one of your eyelids will start to twitch, and that's
Oh,
kind of
yes.
like level one. When you're at both eyelids twitching, that's when it's time to start like reaching out for support and friends to help.
Fair enough.
But
Well,
right now I'm at one eye, which is
Just
okay.
one. Just one. You're good.
excellent. Well, Justice, you're the creator of Doomlings, so why don't you go ahead and give us an overview of what Doomlings is?
Sure. So, Doomlings is a lightweight card game. It's 2 to 6 players, anywhere from 20 to 45 minutes to play. And it's supposed to be sort of a grab and go game, completely cards, no components at all. That was really important for us. And the object of the game is very simple. You're just trying to score the most points by the end of the world. Something I always like to tell people, this was actually not intended to be a pandemic game. My brother and I incepted this over Christmas of 2019. It was just convenient timing that we both kind of lost our jobs and had nothing better to do but,
Oh, I'm sorry to hear
launch a
that.
card game.
Yeah.
No, I mean, and things have come back, but the silver lining is it allowed us to really engage in this passion of ours. I wouldn't trade that for the world.
So, give us a brief overview of how a round of the game plays. I mean, Tico and I have played the game, and our preview slash how to will be online shortly after this is. So, everybody go check that link right up there. And but tell us, for those who have not played the game, what the game is like, how you actually go about playing it.
Sure. So everybody starts the game with what are called traits. So 5 traits in their hands. This is how you score points. Each trait is worth points and can also have special effects. Traits are things anywhere from things like fangs or tiny little melons to more scientific ideas like costly signaling. This is something we find in nature, like with peacock feathers.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also have more philosophical kind of higher cognition traits like morality and self-awareness. So the game is played in rounds. We call those ages. So at the start of each round, the dealer will flip an age. This will introduce a simple rule for that particular round. For example, players cannot play green traits. Then everybody takes a turn playing a trait to either score points or interact with their opponents.
Or screw their opponents over, right, Tico?
Yeah. That may have happened once or twice.
That's my favorite.
Now, occasionally those rounds will actually be catastrophes. So these can be things like super volcano or mega tsunami or nuclear winter. There are 3 catastrophes hidden within the rounds. And when you draw that third and final catastrophe, the world ends, the game is over, and players tally their points. One more thing people should know is we use a special form of card drawing. We call this your gene pool. So that's actually your hand, and your hand size can fluctuate. It can increase or decrease as the game progresses. Naturally, it will actually shrink, but you can play traits to bolster your hand size and give you more opportunities for better strategy and combination.
And what's so unique about the gene pool, the number of cards in your hand, is that's unique to each player, right? It's not it's not global for everybody.
Yeah.
Yes, and that was an interesting challenge we had early on in designing this game. We, again, this being our first Kickstarter, our first game that we're launching into the world, we wanted to make sure that this game was only cards. We love miniatures, we love pieces. We just, we wanted to tackle what we could at the time. So when we were first testing out our gene pool mechanic, we realized, oh boy, that's actually really tough to keep track of and manage for individual players. And that's where we actually came up with a design for the gene pool card. Yeah. So it's just a simple card that can flip and rotate as your hand size will go anywhere between 1 and 8.
Right, right. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So tell me, you'd mentioned you and your brother, started working on this game during the pandemic. But what were some of the inspirations behind creating this game? Where did you come up with the idea for Doomlings?
So originally, it started really on a basic level. We were on holiday with our family in Germany. I have an aunt over on a military base in Germany, and when we're playing with our cousins, it's a mix, right? So my brother and I, we have a big background in games. We get really excited about it, but we also have family and cousins who are not necessarily the gaming type.
Right.
But the whole point of game playing, especially tabletop games, is to share it with your friends, your loved ones.
Yeah, for sure.
And so our community there on holiday, of course, it's a mix, as I mentioned. So we were playing Guillotine, we were playing Sushi Go. These are very simple, very easy to pick up and learn. And I thought, that's awesome, because I don't have to convince my aunt to play this with me. She can learn this in a few minutes, and it's not a big deal. But Andrew and I would get a little, we love those games, but we can only do so many rounds before we want to get something a little more in depth and a little more engaging. So, I'm a big fan of trading card games like Pokemon and Magic the Gathering and Hearthstone.
Yeah.
And I really love the depth that those kinds of games can bring and the excitement of these kind of collectible, unique cards that are being introduced. But I can't play that with my family because you have to spend weeks building your deck.
Yes.
By the time you built your deck, you found a better strategy.
That's right. Yes, absolutely.
So to shorten that up, I thought it would be amazing if we could distill some of those things that I loved, the collectability, the uniqueness of individual cards, the excitement of having this wide range of possibilities, and then this player interaction, this feeling like you're making these combinations that you hadn't quite anticipated, but distill it into a game that you could just pull out of the box and play. You don't have to build a deck, it's ready to go. So I would never tell someone who's a Magic fan, our game is like Magic the Gathering. I would never say that in a million years. It's not. But I like to think that some of the love I have for those types of games is born out of Doomlings, even with, we don't do elements, but we have, 4 colors in color. We have red, blue, green, and purple in color list.
Right.
So
you have a couple of multicolor cards as well, right?
Yeah, so we in the prototype you received, we're introducing. We were playing with a few expansions that we want to use. So the multicolor is part of this prismatic dual color expansion. It's a very simple twist on the mechanic, but we wanted to see what that felt like to gamers, and I think that's a really neat way to add to some of the possibilities.
Sorry, Eric, you were going to say something.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think one thing Justus kind of glossed over there is really like the theme. I've known Justus for, I don't know, more than a decade now. I feel like we, because we work as filmmakers and directing partners, like I feel like I know him. and Justus, I don't know him as well as his wife does, but I would say I'm second up there.
I wonder.
Yeah. But I will say, Justus has this obsession with the end of the world, with what happens after we all disappear. And it just isn't something that keeps me up at night, but it certainly keeps him up. And I think what's really interesting is that he was able to find a way to capture that and almost bottle it all up in a way that isn't like doom and gloom kind of, like darkness. It's sort of, we like to think of it as like, it's the end of the world and I feel fine, like it's, it's kind of all that bottled into one. So I had to pick a card that kind of summarized that. I would say optimistic nihilism is the card that is Justus Meyer on paper.
Nice.
Yeah, there's some fantastic cards. So speaking of the cards, you guys have a really unique way of making sure you're not getting, the same game every single time. You have, the different age cards. I think it was 25 age cards in the base deck and 15 catastrophes that are shuffled in. How did that come about? The idea of sort of building that in order to make sure that you get something a little bit different every time.
So we knew that we wanted the game to end collectively. We didn't want this to be a player driven. Part of that personally is it's funny that I love trading card games. I don't particularly like the feeling of competitiveness, especially in a more accessible game like this. Something, I want to just feel like I'm having a good time with my friends. I don't want to be owning everybody. So I wanted that. You could say the feeling of disappointment that you just didn't quite finish your strategy. I wanted that to be a collective feeling, like we could all feel like, the world ended, not that your opponent just pulled something off before you were about to do that. So we already knew we wanted to do rounds, but beyond that, I think it actually started with this idea that, as Eric mentioned, it's the end of the world. It's this kind of game, but we didn't want to focus so much on the doom aspect. We wanted to focus on moments in time, like each round, we call them ages, but each round is meant to feel like this is a moment in time for us to enjoy, not to reflect on what's to come, but to actually kind of admire while we're there in the moment. And then from there, we were like, well, what do we do with these ages? I mean, they're pretty, they're fun. What do we do with them? Well, what if we just introduce a little spin to everybody's turn? And so I think it became a little more like a natural instinct. And as we were doing that, we thought, holy cow, this is going to make for some pretty unique game, game turns each time.
Yeah,
and then
sure.
I should mention our setup takes inspiration from the game Pandemic.
Absolutely, it does. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the first thing I thought of, was how you deal out your age cards in piles of 3, and then add a catastrophe to each one, shuffle them, and pile them on top of each other. It's exactly how you set up Pandemic.
Yeah. And it's such a brilliant way to do it, because it just ensures that the game doesn't end in the first 3 turns.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is the thing, a problem that I have with some of the games like For Sale, for instance, where you can get 3, crappy cards right in a row, and you're like, well, that whole game sucks. For Sale lawyers are going to call me tomorrow morning. But it's I like having some kind of structure, to the chaos, as it were. And I think the other thing that sort of makes this a very designed, unique game, a designed chaos, are the traits, right? There's no traits that are duplicates or fillers where we just stuffed a bunch of extra cards in there. They're all going to interact with each other differently, which the downside is it's impossible to program on a tabletop simulator.
Oh my gosh.
Every card,
it'll take time.
It'll take time, right? Nothing is impossible, right? If Google can figure things out, we'll find somebody. Yeah. But the upside is that you're never going to stumble into the same patterns, the same combos, the same predictable, all right, so this person just played that card, which means, this trait's coming, there's not, you're not going to have that. It's going to all kind of feel spontaneous, which is kind of life.
Yeah.
Well, plus you don't have to worry about somebody else holding the same card that you just played to sort of reverse something.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Well, let's talk about that just for a little bit. One of the things I loved about your instruction manual was your tiny little instruction book, which was great.
It's gonna grow. It's gonna.
Yeah, no, I know the prototype we had. I know you said it's gonna be a bigger box later on, but we're gonna tell you we love the size of the prototype box. It was great.
I like those small boxes. Yeah. They're really easy to fit into a backpack or into your coat pocket.
But what I love about your instruction booklet is it said, just play the game. Don't worry about reading this unless you want to. But let's talk about, for first-time players, Eric, what are some of your strategies? What would you recommend for those for just jumping into the game, what would you recommend people do to just get in and start playing? What do you look for in a strategy?
Well, I mean, even before you get to strategy, right? And Justice always tells me it's strategy with a lowercase s, right?
Right. Yes.
Not strategy, you know. But the first thing is just trust the cards, right? Just read the cards. They'll tell you what to do. Don't worry so much about what's going to happen. How are we going to keep score? There's a scorecard at the end. You'll figure it out. First things first, just play the cutest card. There's already going to be this kind of, you know, instinct to want to know, like, all right, what does this one do? What does this one do? You know, but you generally can't go wrong. There are a couple that are less strong than other cards, and there are a couple that on your second game you'll go, ooh, I play this -2 point into my opponent's trait pile. But for the most part, 95% of the cards you can't go wrong playing. From there, I would say a really great strategy is try to play cards that increase the size of your gene pool early on,
Okay.
right? So Justice kind of alluded to, your gene pool is going to naturally shrink, and your hand size will naturally shrink as catastrophes strike, as the game plays. So you're going to have fewer options. So if you can build up your options and get up to, like, you know, 6 or 7, or I've only seen it happen once, but like 8 cards in your hand that you can pull from, because you only play generally 1 card per turn.
Right.
You want to have the most amount of options available to you. So those are kind of 2 things, but don't feel the pressure of having to, like, work on a strategy all week for game day on Saturday morning. Like, you're going to be fine.
Yeah. And so, Justice, while you were developing this game, what would you say was the most difficult thing to get right as you're creating it?
Yeah, the two things, because they really go hand in hand. The gene pool was really difficult.
Yeah.
I think we've finally gotten it to a pretty elegant place. The breakthrough really was the gene pool counter card, because we were getting to a point where we were gonna add counters, and I was really heartbroken about that. But yeah, you know, the gene pool is a big one. But I'd say the second thing that kind of goes hand in it's the language. The way we each card, and the reason that's so tricky is because we want to communicate a wide range of possibilities, and sometimes the effects are just little twists on themselves. I mean, sometimes it's, you know, one card is draw 4 cards, one card is draw 3 cards, but we don't have 2 draw 3 cards, and that's important to us.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
So, but we've found that at a certain point, when you've got, I mean, the base game is 150 plus cards. If you have 150, you know what I mean?
Yes.
If over 100 of them are different pieces of language, and we want them all to be a sentence, you know, we want them short and clean.
Yeah.
And by the way, the idea that someone's holding 5 at a time, so it's not just the one card they're looking at. They're now, as a first-time player, seeing 5 different pieces of language that they have to make sense of.
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
So we want that simple, we want it short, we want it concise, and yet we need it clear. And it's like, as you reduce the words, it becomes less clear what we're trying to get you to do. So I'd say that has been the biggest challenge of the year. That we still workshop, but I think we're kind of getting it. We're getting it there.
Is Doomlings, going into Kickstarter, is Doomlings the game now that you originally set out to make, or has it changed a lot since you first envisioned it?
Conceptually, it's the game we set out to make.
Awesome.
And I have a lot of pride about that. We had a lot of big ideas going. I shouldn't say big ideas, but we had a lot of complexities that I didn't recognize as complexities until it'd been played hundreds of times.
Okay.
You know, to a little insight, thematically, I really loved the idea that your gene pool were these traits that were unexpressed. And then by the time they enter the table, they're expressed. Your species now has fangs, right?
Yes.
So I went a little too far with that, and originally the cards within your hand were referred to as genes, and the cards on the table were referred to as traits. And I thought, well, that just makes sense, but nobody could keep track of that. So, you know, little changes like that.
Awesome.
So.
So tell me, you mentioned that you have some expansion plans. Can you talk a little bit about some of your expansion plans or maybe some of your stretch goals on your Kickstarter?
Yeah, of course. So we have a couple expansions that I like to think of more as booster packs. So
Okay.
this
Okay.
type of game benefits really well from added content. Just like any trading card game, you get to see twists on old ideas. You get to see new characters, and that's kind of how we can build off the game. So we have Dino Doomlings, which is a lot of fun. We explore
Oh,
prehistoric traits. We
nice.
we go anywhere from scientific like proto feathers. To more accessible ideas like tiny arms, and they are some of the
Not tiny hands?
no, just tiny arms.
Just
We're
tiny
aiming
up.
at it here. We don't touch on pop culture in that way. So no, but we also have techlings, one of my favorite sets. So there we're exploring more futuristic ideas like bionic arm or hyper myelination with chitin. We get a little weird with it. Um,
Awesome.
and then we also have mythlings. So mythlings are we really run the gambit with that. We have elven ears. We have ancient. We have rainbow horns, so our little unicorn doomling.
Awesome.
Yeah. And then
The age of Dracula, which is a pretty good age.
that's in the prototype. Yeah, so you would
Yeah.
have gotten to play with that. And then
Yeah.
finally we have an expansion called The Meaning of Life. And this is sort of a spin on the game. It comes with hidden objectives. All players get a hidden card no one else is able to see. And this is for players who have played the game a few times and want a little twist to it. And we don't think of these as traits so much as we think of them as the sort of like foundation of your own existence, your purpose in life.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Very cool. Now, what about post Kickstarter? Once I mean, this game is going to get funded. I can say it right now. You're going to get funded easy because it's such a great game.
Yeah.
It's a perfect.
You want me to
Just,
coach you on that?
yes, yes, it is. It's a beautiful game for one thing.
Sean will cover the difference.
No, but
Oh, it's a beautiful game. It's like you said.
Thank
It is. Play the cutest card, Eric, is what you said, and that's really. It's so true because they're just these cute little balls, and they're actually awesome. The artwork is so fantastic. But
Thank you.
after Kickstarter, if someone finds the Kickstarter but it's too late, what's your plans afterwards? Are you planning to sell it online? Do you want to get into retail?
Yeah, I mean, the long-term goal would be to get it into retail, and it's something we're slowly exploring. But honestly, right now, the main focus is just making sure we have a successful Kickstarter. So the hope is, Kickstarter goes well, we'll do some additional, if for some reason we have a lot of interest, we'll open it up to additional orders that will not take priority over the Kickstarter backers. I want to be very clear, right?
Okay.
Our Kickstarter backers, that's our core people that we have to take care of first.
For sure.
They were the ones on the ground floor, in our corner, first to market backing us. I think from there, yeah, that would be a really awesome thing to see this, someday on a shelf in a game store. I mean, it'd be really cool.
Yeah.
But again, we are going to open it to brick and mortar retailers, and if they want to get in at the Kickstarter level, they can simply pledge $1 and then message us privately, and we can arrange an order that's the size that they're looking for as well. But again, right now, the first thing is just getting it in the hands of everyday backer.
Awesome. Well, Justus, Eric, thank you so much for joining us to tell us all about Doomlings. It is a fun game. Tico and I have played the prototype. Again, check out our channel for the review / how to play on that. But gentlemen, thanks for joining us and good luck on your campaign.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
having us. Awesome.
Thank you so much. We were looking forward to chatting with you both. This has
I'm
been
glad.
wonderful.
Us too.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Well, I hope everybody enjoyed what they saw. If you liked our story, please back our campaign. We're launching Doomlings on March 2nd. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button for OMG Nexus.